There we go. Hi, this is Brandon Kiser. This is my week 7 assignment demonstration speech. I wanted to start off by asking, do you or anybody you know have a fish tank? Now, most households in America, actually probably all over the world, have fish tanks. One thing they don't tell you in the store when you buy these fish tanks is how to clean them, how to set them up, how to take care of them, because it's not as simple as just adding water. A lot of time that's what people do, and that's a lot of time why people end up losing so many fish, and it's such a difficult and sometimes expensive hobby. So the purpose of this is to demonstrate how to properly clean a fish tank and care for the fish tank. Now, the first and most important part is, of course, your materials that you need. Now, to start, I always get a few rags, and the purpose for the rags is to place around the fish tank, because while you're doing it, there's usually going to be water that falls out, and it's going to get underneath the fish tank. So if you put them right up against the tank, it'll stop a lot of that water, or most of it, from getting anywhere under the tank. If it gets under there and it's sitting on a cabinet, it can end up molding or rotting that wood out. So it's very important that you do this. The next portion that or of the materials that you want is some sort of water conditioner. Now, I personally choose a water conditioner that has basically like a probiotic slime in it. This slime is naturally on fish. They have it in the wild, and this is what protects them from diseases. Now, in the store, they sell a regular water conditioner for usually $1 more. You can get the conditioner that has slime in it, and it'll say, contains. It's basically a slime coating. Make sure to get that. It's really, really important. It'll save the fish from a lot of stress and a lot of issues down the line. So, what I have a 5-gallon bucket I pre-made so I didn't have to run off the screen since I don't know how to pause. 5-gallon bucket. Super, super important for this bucket is to condition it with the stuff that we talked about, and then I also put a bacterial supplement, which is basically an immune system booster for your fish, and then finally a plant food. A lot of times if you have plants inside fish tanks, it provides natural oxygen for the fish, food, a better atmosphere. It just makes them happier. There is not any negative to having natural plants inside of a fish tank. So there's basically a lack of iron in most places' water, so you need to reintroduce that into the water to keep those plants alive and fresh. So inside this 5-gallon bucket, I've pre-mixed everything. It's really, really important that you put the water in a little bit above the temperature of what the existing water is. If you've ever heard of ick, is what they call it, that's the most common type of disease or issue that fish get. It's little white spots, and it'll kill them. It'll usually kill them within a couple of weeks. It's like cancer for their skin, and another one of those things that slime protects. But when you introduce water into their system, if it's colder, it shocks their immune system, and their gills and their fins and everything doesn't know how to handle that, so it shocks them. They end up getting this sickness, and they'll die within a couple of weeks. So to put nice warm water in there, I always go a few degrees warmer. I test it out with my finger. You just put your finger in there and see what it is, and then when you're getting ready to go ahead and put the water in, just double check one more time. Stick your finger in the water, stick your finger in the tank, and you'll notice a big difference. Typically, fish tanks run at, and it depends on the fish, there's marine fish, which is another word for saltwater. Those are very difficult fish tanks to keep. And then there's tropical, which is a freshwater fish. They're typically your less aggressive, more docile, easier to manage, less expensive. That's what this tank is just a freshwater fish tank. So the first thing is we're going to take this as one of our materials. Now, a lot of people will have little bowls on their nightstand or on their kitchen table. If you have something like that, you don't really need to use something like this. All you have to do is go down there and mix the rocks around. Take a net, scoop out all the excess stuff. There's going to be floating things. Now when you feed them, the reason why we're doing this is when you feed fish, they poop and they pee. And that creates ammonia in the water. Also, that ammonia can eventually kill them. So their tank will eventually develop a natural ecosystem that will cycle itself and protect itself. But they still do need freshening or a freshened water supply every few weeks to a month. Now basically the first part is, I'm going to see if I can get in the picture, is this little tube runs inside here and it goes down into the gravel, and you have the other end of the thing, the tube, that goes down into the bucket. Now when you put it down in here like that, you're just going to suck out the gravel. You're going to try to get all the big impurities, all the excess food that they didn't eat, all of the poop, all of the, if there's any plant residue, anything. All that needs to be gone. Typically when you drain a tank, and I've already drained a little bit for this demonstration, you're going to want to take about 10 to 20% of the water out. That's about the suggested area. If you start taking more than that, it once again becomes a shock of the system. And the last thing we want to do is shock their system. So, next what we want to do after you've sucked through all this gravel is make sure and of course rearrange everything the way that they like it. All the fish in this tank will have a certain spot that they call home. Now, once they find that home and they feel comfortable, that's where they'll spend all their time. So once you figure out those areas, you kind of build around those areas to make them feel better and more safe. And by doing that, they get sick less often, they last longer. Typically, if you take proper care of a fish tank, you can see a fish last 5 to 10 years. A little couple dollar fish versus a fish only making it a couple of months. There's a bunch of little techniques that go into taking a fish tank and making it last a long time. The next important part is the filter. Every tank has a filtration system. Like I said, tanks naturally cycle themselves, but impurities still do need to be sucked out of the water. And what the filters do is they introduce charcoal through the filtration system, and they suck out, once again, the ammonia, because that's the most dangerous portion for a fish. So we're going to use these, and anytime you get a fish tank in the store, this filter will tell you exactly what size, what kind. I mean, you can look this up. It's really easy. Usually it's $10 for a box of about 5 of them. If it's a fish tank on your nightstand or kitchen table, you don't use filters. It's all about fresh water. It's all about reintroducing fresh water, taking out the old, introducing the new. Now, one thing I wanted to point out real quick, if you do have a kitchen, a tank or something like this, you never remove the fish. Removing the fish stresses them out. Stress, once they have that, that's when they start getting sick, their immune system breaks down, and they'll eventually die. That doesn't mean they'll die every time. It's just another chance, another probability that something bad's going to happen to them. So we always leave them in the tank. They never ever come out of the water. They never go into little bowls of water. They always stay inside this tank unless there is some sort of disease outbreak or something like that. But if you maintain this properly, don't introduce new fish too quickly, you won't have an issue like that. So next portion is we're going to replace this filter. And there's a filter in here. This actually has a bio wheel as well. And you'll notice that's actually pretty clean. These filters need to be replaced, I'd say, about every month. This is what they look like. And if you hear it, it's full of charcoal. You can see it right there. That's all it is charcoal and foam. Really cheap, really easy. You can usually go to your pet store and they make knockoffs of these. And that's all. You don't need to buy the name brand. The knockoffs are the same exact thing for, 90% off or something like that. So that's typically what I like to do. Next part that's really important, pouring the water. You don't stuff it all in there at one time. You do it lightly, and you also notice when you put it in there, the fish will gravitate towards it. They like that water. And as you pour it, it's introducing new oxygen into their ecosystem. So if you do it nice and slowly and raise it up a little bit off the water, they like that. So I'm going to pour this water in here real quick. And you just do it very, very slow. This is the bucket that I prepared. Just super, super slow. And you might have to go back and rearrange a few of the plants that you made, or a few of the houses that you created for everybody. But you basically want to fill it to where you can't see the bottom of the water line, because the water will naturally dissipate. It will naturally burn off, which means you have to go back and keep replacing this water. So every time you put them in there, you'll notice that they start swimming around up towards the water. So you see them in there? They love it. They love the warm water. They love the oxygen. It makes them happy. So that's all we need to do. The final part of this that I wanted to go over one more time in the demonstration is all of the plants. This all is very, very important. If you have multiple fish, they all have different levels that they swim. There's top feeders, middle feeders, and bottom feeders. You can tell which is which by where their mouth is. If their mouth is pointed up, like this, it's a top feeder. If it's in the middle, it's a middle feeder. And if it looks like a catfish, it's a bottom feeder. When you have a tank, you want to make sure and set up even areas. So you want to have a few top, a few medium, and a few bottom. In addition to that, these plants, these are all basically strategically placed for each one of the little habitats that they have. They all have different areas that they live. And so once I found out, like I stated earlier, we kind of built around it to make sure that they all were happy and had their homes to go and feel safe and hide. The final portion of this, after you put everything together, is you go back, put this back on. You take your stuff that you put around the edge here, these towels, and you just wipe everything off. A tank constantly needs to be wiped off. If you ever go to like an aquarium at the beach or something like that, you'll notice the smell and the condensation and a lot of the buildup. That all needs to be wiped off constantly. So that's all another part of taking care of a healthy fish tank. Besides that, another quick note I wanted to point it out that will actually help in reducing the amount of changes that you have to do is how much you feed fish. When you feed fish, you give them enough that they'll eat in 1 minute. So you put a little pinch in there, wait for a minute, let them eat it, put a little pinch in there, wait for them a minute, let them eat it, and then every fish has to have their food type. If they're bottom feeders, they eat something a little differently maybe than your middle feeders or top feeders. It all depends on the style of fish. So once again, I created this video, as I said in the introduction, to help demonstrate how to properly care and change out a fish tank to make sure that the lives of the fish are happier, but also they're longer. You can enjoy a fish tank a lot longer if you follow these few steps, and you'll basically get to enjoy them. They sit here. Once everything is set up in this, you do a change up every 2 to 4 weeks on the water, 10 to 20%. That's it. Everything does itself. It all manages itself all inside of here. So that's everything. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.